probably what we think of in the Matthew text, right? A dove descends. It's not a pigeon. You know, those things that eat the garbage and flock to you on the bench and are really annoying. But the dove with the angelic song, they make the sense from heaven. But, you know, then I like pigeons. But it's like saying, do you play the violin or the fiddle? You know, it's kind of the same thing. But in any case, there's so many great stories about these birds. For example, in World War I and World War II, do you know how many carrier pigeons the U.S. had? 200,000. 200,000 carrier pigeons. And in 1918, just these remarkable birds, a pigeon was sent out right before the end of the war by a battalion of 189 soldiers who were trapped and cut off behind enemy lines. And the pigeon flew up, right? They released the carrier pigeon. It got shot in the breast and the leg. It flew 40 miles and delivered its message, and these soldiers were saved. And this bird, Cher Ami, retired in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and was given like all these medals of honor, you know, because this pigeon saved all these soldiers' lives. I mean, there's some really interesting things about pigeons because they have an innate ability to find their way home. I mean, that's sort of like their fame, right? I mean, in the ancient world, they were used as messengers, you know, and it's sort of like in the story of Noah, they're also used to find land. He was not the only person who let a pigeon go in that story, but that was a common practice. But in the 1950s, a pigeon that had never left its town in Saigon. Check this story out. You're going to be like, this is a lie, but it's true. A bird was put in the hull of a ship, right? Underneath, couldn't see anything, and it was brought to France, 7,200 miles away. And they let this bird out, and it found its way home in 24 days. It had no olfactory, no scent, no visual cues, but it knew where to go. 7,200 miles. Isn't that amazing? Like, I mean, and so they're these remarkable birds. They're just everywhere, right? They're probably the first domesticated bird. 4,500 BC is when we think birds were starting to be domesticated. And we hear this morning about a pigeon, a dove. And have you ever wondered why? Like, why is the Holy Spirit a dove? Is it graceful? Yeah, I mean, sure, yeah, I mean, it's a bird, right? I mean, it could have been like something cooler, right? You know, but, I mean, you know, we heard in Genesis today that God's Spirit hovered or moved over the waters, right? And so, in the Talmud, actually, there's commentary that is like a dove. You know, so there was some tradition of saying, I mean, that was not to say that it was the embodiment of a dove, but to talk about the motion, perhaps imagined there. Which would be an ancient commentary on the scriptures, and also there's Noah, right? Noah is famous for surviving the flood. That lone person to listen to God's word and build an ark and get the animals on there, and his family. He's out at sea looking for dry land. He's been out there for days and days and days. And he's been letting a pigeon go, and hopefully it would come back with some sign of land. And then finally, one day, the pigeon returns with an olive branch, right? A sign of peace in a lot of ways. And so that no one knows that the land has returned and he can get back to the land. And there's an ancient commentary on the dove in the New Testament that we hear, where the dove that Noah sent out to find dry land finally returns again and lands on Jesus, like our new dry land, our new way forward after the flood has emerged in Jesus Christ, who is coming out of the water. Right? And we often associate baptism with the flood, of the dying and rising of us, the killing of the old and the birth of the new, and the waters of the flood of baptism. And so that same dove, some would say, was the same dove that Noah sent out. Right? And now Jesus is the new dry land. And when you think about it, it had to be a dove. It had to be a pigeon. Because if you think about that story about 7,200 miles, right? Like, think about how far that bird had to go. Not knowing the way, flying over countries, crossing borders, landing in unfamiliar territory to rest, and then taking off again. It had to be a dove. And so the symbolism is quite powerful when you about these peculiar little birds that are kind of everywhere, right? I mean, they're everywhere. they can be more everywhere if you feed them, and they just sort of turn up. I mean, we see them around here all the time too. Actually, pastor from across the street, he's a ornithologist, and so he goes around Rahway birding all the time. Bill, and he's always letting me know what he finds. And there's some really interesting birds around here, but there are quite a few pigeons. But the point being is that we think of distance as the real challenge, right? I mean, you think 7,200 miles for the pigeon that went from Saigon, from France to Saigon is unbelievable. Many pigeons can go 1,200 miles on average. You know, that's about the average, but this one's a peculiar one. But the distance isn't so much the challenge with God, right? When you think about the borders crossed in our baptism, it's much more intricate than that, because as you know, either you're baptized as an adult or a child, the challenge remains: does my baptism matter? You know, what good is it? You know, because you know, here I am 40 years since then, and I could write more than one book on the many mistakes I've had. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, so what does that matter? A little bit of water, a little bit of words, or if you're an adult and you were submerged later, and you decided I'm going to follow Jesus, and this will be my sign both to the church and the world that I'm Jesus' disciple. Nonetheless, we're still who we are, you know. And so you may be yearning for this new creation that we always hear about in church, right? Like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen for me and for the world? But the biggest boundary that the dove of the Holy Spirit crosses is us. And it's not only all the mistakes we have, but then our doubt. You know, was it enough? So what do you think? We're plunging into like 2,000 years of like debate here, so let's just do it. What do you think? Was the baptism enough? Are we drowned with Christ in the flood waters of baptism and raised to something new, like Noah, finding new land and a new beginning? I mean, we know how that story went, right? Like 2 minutes on dry land, and humanity, guess what? Is humanity. And so, or does it matter? Does it really confer on us something different?
I think it matters. I think, it's being born again. Dying from old and born again. So, I think it's enough.
Yeah.
Sure it matters. Like you say, Jesus died for everyone. We are saved through Jesus by grace. No matter what we do from here on out, just like a parent forgives his children. And yes, it does matter, because it gives me a feeling of wholeness.
And I think of it as a new beginning. Refreshed.
Yeah. I mean, the baptism debate for the church is long and still unresolved, right? So some traditions baptize infants, sometimes do both. Some traditions do both, and some do baptize people when they're older, so that they can make a conscious choice that their lives will be transformed. And so, I'm not really weighing into that so much, as to the when, because at any point, what you think about baptism can be applied to anyone at any age. But really, what's happening in baptism? And so the question is it God's sign to humanity? Or is it my sign to the world? Right? It can be both, yeah, sure.
The promise. Both directions.
Yeah, right. And so, I mean, and the church has done both, right? Done both.
Jesus says it's a long night, a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and the sort of lurking question, the one that wasn't asked so much, maybe until someone recently, is like, what if you're not baptized? So what? Right? So what's the difference between someone who's baptized and someone who's not?
You're not baptized, I think you consider repent.
Well, all right, let's start at the beginning. You go to hell if you're not baptized. Yeah. So if you're not baptized, you go, you have a southbound ticket to the fire jets. No, I don't think so.
Would you still be considered a child of God? Everyone's a child of God, whether you're baptized or not, circumcised or not.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
Lutheran, Jewish, Methodist, it doesn't. You're a child of God.
If you're baptized with it, you don't have to be baptized in the sea.
so when you receive communion, because the Lutheran Church has two sacraments, right? We have baptism and communion. And then there's like, well, maybe foot washing, maybe anointing the sick, whatever, God's there, we're good. And so we have two that we say, well, we know these two because Jesus did these two. Sort of. Because Paul says Jesus baptized and then he didn't, so we don't really know. But in any case, that when we say, this is my body given for you, right? Baptism is given for the person being baptized and the community that person is being baptized into. See, so what we will say, and what we're standing sort of on the heels of like a Roman Catholic tradition and Luther and some other contemporary thought, but the idea is that it's given to the person to think about, this is how God touched my life. If you were baptized as an infant, like I said at the beginning, you were baptized and claimed by God before you could mess up, right? So that means not to make light of our mistakes, right? Our mistakes are transformative experiences, right? If no one's ever made a mistake, then they've never grown from the ones they've actually made and not acknowledged, right? So I mean, mistakes are part of the course, but God says, I love you, and I love you no matter what you're going to do. If you're a toddler and you're walking, however you're going to fall down, if you're an adult, and you mess up big time, God's going to say, you're mine, right? There's nothing that can be done about that. You're claimed by God, right? And so that's for you to look back on and say, in those dark moments, I don't know. I'm okay. I try and do what I can, but I've got all these other commitments, or sometimes I just get too busy to think about God or what I should be doing or whatever, but baptism is for you to rest on. Right? So absent baptism, if you're not baptized, then you might say that you have to go somewhere else. Right? But it's a sign and sacrament for the church to give comfort to people. Right? Not to say if you are not baptized, you're going to hell. That's not what it's about. That's not what any of the sacraments are supposed to be. They're not punitive. It's supposed to be about grace. Right? And the church, for better or for worse, has leveraged the sacraments in another way. Right? And I know I went to my aunt's funeral and I couldn't receive communion. Right? Okay? What? Well, I've received communion in other Catholic contexts before, but that was like, oh man, I really want to do this here. And so that felt like something other than sacrament to me. I respect the tradition, I respect the priest, but it wasn't exactly how I wanted it to be. And so Catherine had different opinions about it. And you would ask her about those if you like. But I would rather have been different. The sacraments, right? When Jesus is baptized, he goes into the water, and then the beautiful part about this story is the heavens open up, and guess what? It's a book that never closes. The heavens never close. Right? So the dove of the Holy Spirit finds dry ground in Jesus Christ, saying everything has been changed. The whole landscape, the whole environment, the cosmos has been redone and rewritten here. And so if you're lost at sea, the Holy Spirit's going to guide you unto thee, right? And to Jesus. And so that's supposed to be grace. And if someone's talking about it like it's not, then say, that's not what it's about. I've plenty of folks that are not baptized in the name of Jesus. Because other people have different forms of baptism. It's not just water. There's a lot of stuff. And so, that's not for you or I to say. All I can say is that I was baptized, and God, through the mouth of some pastor or somebody, a nurse, right? My mom baptized more babies than I ever have. She was a nurse. Somebody said these words over me. Hey, Dennis, we're talking kid. And so that's what it's about. And so when Jesus comes up out of the waters, like John is the first. might say, well, there's 4 walls, there's some windows. It's a building. But to us, it's a church. And when I first came here, I was like, there's no stained glass in here? What? How could this be a church? Because I grew up Catholic, so. But I mean, it's a church, and so like that's what it is. And like if people have never seen a church and come in here, they'll say, I don't know. I mean, at the homeless vigil, right? We had a guy, a priest from Colombia. He had never in his life, he had been in the United States for like 6 or 7 weeks. He had never done an interfaith event in his life. He had never been outside a Catholic church in his life. And when he tried to talk about this building, he's like, this is a place where people pray. He didn't say church. It's very clear. I was like, listen, I'm like, what's he going to say here? But he was blown away, but he didn't know what to call this place. But for you, like baptism and communion, it's a church. And so, can we use those eyes and ears of faith to hear God's whisper and sometimes scream, you are my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased. Because, we think of the Saigon pigeon, right? 7,200 miles, the hardest border that God's vision has to cross is us. We have the best defenses. We have the most evidence. We have the most reasons. We have, you can say, if you look at life at face value, you're born and you die. And then whatever happens in between, it means something to you. But to most other people. Right? And so, but the eyes of faith say, life changes by the power of God through me to transform everything and everyone that I meet, that I talk about. Right? That God's Spirit flows through you like a conduit. Because somebody some years ago put a little water on your head and said some words and said, this is what this is. This is God saying, you are mine. And God will not let you go. And you're going to mess up, some worse than others. But you still have a parent in God. And then the biggest, the question is, well, what happens after we die? Right? And the tradition there is, as old, I suppose, that life in many traditions begins with the first breath, right? In Judaism, and that's where life begins. I mean, that's God breathes into the human, and guess what? The human is alive, right? So that leads into some other political conversations, but nonetheless, so life, the breath of God enters us, right? And then the breath of God goes back to God. The first breath is God's, and so is the last. And so you go back to where you came from. Right? So this is faith. And when I get up in the morning, I see the house and the chaos and the laundry that needs to be folded. I'll tell you right now, there's like an army of laundry baskets that I measure. And I'm like, getting out of there, it's like walking for a mile. I have to plan my course. But then I'm like, these things are here for a reason. There's so much life here. God has blessed us with so much. It's not a burden. I mean, I get to it today or tomorrow, the next day. And he said I should take a break and come over and fold for me. But life is so full of more and deeper meanings. We can give thanks to God for this. It's not just water and words. It's God's words coming to us on the pages of Scripture through the mouth of someone today who has the time or the wherewithal to even remember to say it. I mean, that's a blessing in and of itself. How many books are written and forgotten? Yet this one